Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to be explaining the difference between kinetic and static friction. If you try to imagine you have to move a very heavy piece of furniture, you start pushing on this furniture with some force and it doesn't move. It's very heavy, so you have to increase your force. At some point it starts moving. So once you start moving, sliding this furniture around your room, it becomes easier to move than when you start pushing it from rest. If you stop, then to pick up and try to move it again, it will be harder once again, just like the first time. Why does this happen? The force that prevented the furniture from sliding from rest is the static force of friction. This means that acceleration is equal to 0 when static friction is applied to an object. You can see in the free body diagram that the force applied and the force of static friction are the same magnitude but different directions. Always the static force of friction and the applied force will equal each other until the breaking point, when the applied force is greater than the maximum static force and you're able to move the furniture. Once it is sliding or moving, the force that impedes the motion is the kinetic friction. In this case, the acceleration is not 0, as the object is moving. In the free body diagram here, the kinetic friction is smaller than the applied force. How do you calculate or know what these frictions are then? Everything has a coefficient of kinetic friction and a coefficient of static friction. How rough a surface is, for example, will help determine the coefficient. The equations you must remember are that the static friction is less than or equal to mu s times the normal force, where mu s is the coefficient of static friction. The kinetic friction is equal to the coefficient of kinetic friction times the normal force. The static friction is always the same as the force applied until it reaches the maximum static friction. So if I apply 3 newtons, the static friction will be also 3 newtons. Then I increase my force to 5 newtons, and it will increase to 5 newtons, and so on. Once the applied force is greater than this number, the friction applied on the object becomes the kinetic friction. In other words, the object starts moving. In the graph I am showing you here, you can see how the maximum amount of static friction is greater than the kinetic friction. How is that possible? So remember when I mentioned that to start moving a very heavy object, it feels like it is harder to move it from rest than to actually just continue sliding it across the room once it starts moving. That is because it is harder. The breaking point from having the object at rest and start moving is where you require more force to fight that friction. Once it starts moving, it is easier to keep moving the same object. So the main thing you need to remember when solving problems that involve the force of friction is that you will use static force of friction if the object is not moving, and you will use the kinetic equation or the kinetic friction if you know that the object is actually moving. If you have any questions, just let me know. In the next video, I'm going to be solving a problem with the force of friction involved. Thank you for watching.